Living alone in old age can feel like entering a new chapter of life, one filled with both quiet reflection and unique challenges. But more than anything, it's a time that can be empowering and deeply enriching. As someone who has embraced this stage of life, I understand how living alone shapes you, often in ways you might not expect. I've seen conversations across forums where many people share their experiences. Based on those voices, here's what living alone often makes us do as we grow older, and how these changes can add more depth and meaning to our lives. Number 1. Reconnecting with ourselves. One of the most powerful things I've observed is how living alone allows us to reconnect with our inner selves. Many people mention how the absence of constant distractions lets them rediscover who they are at their core. Take Margaret, a 65-year-old woman who shared her story on a Reddit thread. After her husband passed away, she moved into a small apartment, unsure of what the future held. For the first time in years, she had no one to cater to, no one to share the daily routines with. At first, she said, the silence felt overwhelming. But slowly, Margaret found herself rediscovering things she used to love, like gardening. She started small, with a few pots of herbs on her windowsill. Now she jokes that she's become the crazy plant lady with an entire balcony filled with greenery. Margaret's journey of reconnecting with herself didn't happen overnight, but she learned that being alone doesn't have to mean feeling lonely. It can be about rediscovering your passions and filling your time with things that bring you joy. When she sits down with a cup of tea and looks at her plants, she feels a sense of peace that had been missing for years. Two, developing new routines and rituals. Living alone requires us to create a daily structure that fits our needs, and this often leads to new routines or rituals. Many people have shared how they've developed morning rituals that are completely their own, whether it's enjoying a cup of tea while watching the sunrise, practicing yoga, or simply sitting in silence to plan the day. John, a retired engineer, shared a comment in an online video about how living alone changed the way he structured his days. After decades of waking up at 5 a.m. for work, he finally allowed himself the luxury of sleeping in. Now his mornings are slow and deliberate. He enjoys his coffee while reading the newspaper, something he never had time for before. He even started a new tradition, taking a 20-minute walk around his neighborhood every afternoon. He mentioned that his new routine gave his days a sense of rhythm and purpose. John said something that really struck me. When you live alone, your time is your own. You're not rushing for anyone. You can build your day exactly the way you like, and there's something truly satisfying about that. Another example comes from Lily, a widow in her early 70s. She began ending her day with a candlelit bath and a book. It became her personal ritual, one that helped her unwind and reflect. Her routine, she said, turned her nights from moments of loneliness into ones of comfort and peace. This small act of self-care helped her embrace the calm that comes with solitude. 3. Becoming more self-reliant. Living alone encourages self-reliance in ways that are both practical and emotional. You're the one responsible for managing every part of your life, from grocery shopping to home maintenance and making health decisions. For many, this can be daunting, but it also brings an incredible sense of accomplishment. For Arthur, living alone at 68 was an unexpected challenge when his wife passed away. He shared his story on a popular online forum about how he was left feeling overwhelmed by everyday tasks, especially cooking and home maintenance. He'd never cooked more than toast and eggs, relying on his wife to prepare meals throughout their marriage. But when she was gone, he realized he had to fend for himself. Arthur turned to YouTube and began watching simple cooking tutorials. His first success? A basic pasta dish that he proudly shared with his online community. He admitted that it was far from gourmet, but it was something he had made for himself. Over time, Arthur's cooking skills improved, and now he often experiments with recipes he finds online. He even jokes that his late wife would be impressed by his newfound skills in the kitchen. This sense of self-reliance gave Arthur a newfound confidence and sense of accomplishment. Then there's Joyce, who had never paid much attention to her home's maintenance. But after moving into a small house on her own, she started learning how to fix things around the house. With the help of online forums, she learned how to unclog a sink, change a light fixture, and even build her own bookshelves. Joyce shared that becoming more self-sufficient was a learning curve, but it gave her a deep sense of pride. "I never thought I'd be the handy one in the house," she wrote, "but it turns out I'm stronger and more capable than I gave myself credit for." 4. Rediscovering old hobbies and exploring new interests. One of the unexpected gifts of living alone is the freedom to indulge in hobbies, both old ones you may have left behind and new ones you've never had the chance to try. Whether it's dusting off the paintbrushes or learning to play the piano, living alone gives you the time and space to dive into what genuinely excites you. Carol, in her mid-70s, talked about rediscovering her love for painting. She hadn't picked up a paintbrush in over 40 years, but after retiring and living alone, she found herself yearning for something creative to fill her time. Carol shared in a post that she began attending local art classes again, surrounded by people half her age, but she didn't mind. It wasn't long before she turned a small corner of her living room into a mini studio. Her walls are now filled with her work, and she shared that painting has become her therapy, a way to express herself and reconnect with her younger self. Her story is a beautiful reminder that it's never too late to revisit old passions. Similarly, Bill, a 72-year-old living alone in Florida, found solace in an unexpected hobby: birdwatching. After his wife passed away, he struggled with grief and often found himself restless. But one afternoon, while sitting in his backyard, he noticed the variety of birds flying in and out of his garden. He started keeping a journal of the species he saw, eventually buying a pair of binoculars. Bill wrote in a comment that birdwatching helped him heal. "I realize that life continues in the smallest, most beautiful ways, even when we think it's standing still," he said. 5. Building stronger connections with others on your own terms. Living alone doesn't mean isolation. It's far from it. In fact, many people find that living alone makes their social interactions more meaningful because they have the energy and space to choose who they spend their time with. You start reaching out to people who genuinely enrich your life, and this leads to deeper, more fulfilling relationships. Doris, a woman in her late 60s, shared how living alone actually improved her relationships with her children and friends. With no one else to take care of, Doris found herself making time for intentional phone calls and coffee dates. She said that she had never felt closer to her daughter because now they have more meaningful conversations, uninterrupted by the busyness of life. Another example comes from James, a retired schoolteacher who had always been an introvert. But living alone helped him realize how much he valued deep connections with a few close friends. He now schedules weekly game nights with friends he met at a local senior center. James said that these interactions have become the highlight of his week, and he cherishes the time spent with people who bring joy and laughter into his life. 6. Facing loneliness and finding comfort in solitude. Loneliness is often a concern when living alone, especially in old age. But what many people say, and I've found to be true as well, is that you start distinguishing between loneliness and solitude. Solitude can be incredibly peaceful, a time for reflection and self-care. One widow by the name of Anna shared a candid reflection on her struggle with loneliness after her husband passed away. At first, the silence in her home was unbearable, but over time, Anna learned to embrace the quiet moments. She said she found peace in sitting by her window, watching the sunset with a cup of tea. This simple act, she said, became a form of meditation. Anna emphasized the importance of distinguishing between being alone and being lonely. She admitted that loneliness creeps in sometimes, but she's learned to combat it by calling her sister, taking walks, or volunteering at the local library. Her story shows that loneliness is a natural part of the journey, but it doesn't have to define you. 7. Creating a space that reflects you. When you live alone, your home becomes an extension of who you are. Many people have shared how they've used this opportunity to create a living space that feels uniquely theirs, whether it's decorating in a way that truly speaks to you, or reorganizing your furniture to maximize comfort and practicality. Living alone gives you the freedom to design your environment exactly how you like. Paul, in his 60s, shared a story about finally getting the freedom to design his home the way he wanted. When he and his wife divorced, Paul moved into a small apartment and found himself with a blank canvas. He had never cared much for decor before, but living alone gave him the opportunity to create a space that reflected his personality. He started decorating with vintage posters from his favorite movies and filled his bookshelves with old classics. His living space, he said, is now 100% me. Similarly, Evelyn, a retired nurse, had always dreamed of having a home filled with vibrant colors, but her husband preferred more neutral tones. After his passing, she redecorated their home with bright hues of yellow and teal, colors that she said brought her happiness. For the first time, Evelyn said, I live in a space that truly feels like my own. 8. Practicing mindfulness and gratitude. When you live alone, you become more attuned to the present moment. With fewer distractions, many older adults find themselves practicing mindfulness, whether consciously or not. Helen, a woman in her late 70s, shared in an online video how she began incorporating mindfulness into her daily life after moving into a small cottage by herself. She noticed that she started savoring her meals more, enjoying each bite instead of rushing through meals as she had when cooking for a family. Simple activities, like watering plants or folding laundry, became meditative for her. Similarly, David, a retired teacher, mentioned that he began keeping a gratitude journal after he started living alone. Each evening, he writes down 3 things he's thankful for. It could be as simple as the birds chirping outside his window, or a kind word from a neighbor. He said that practicing gratitude has transformed his mindset, helping him focus on the positive aspects of his life rather than dwelling on loneliness. Both Helen and David's experiences show how living alone creates the space for reflection, helping us appreciate life's smaller, quieter moments. 9. Taking charge of health and well-being. Living alone encourages a proactive approach to health, both mental and physical. George, a 69-year-old who shared his story on a health-focused forum, explained that after he started living alone, he realized he was solely responsible for his own well-being. Without anyone to remind him to stay active or eat well, he knew he had to take control. George began walking every morning, even if it was just around the block. Over time, he added more distance and eventually joined a local walking group. Now, not only does he feel fitter, but he's also made new friends. Monica, in her early 70s, found that living alone gave her the push to address her mental health. She shared in a forum that after years of putting herself last, behind work, family, and caregiving, she finally had the time to focus on her emotional well-being. Monica began seeing a therapist and practicing meditation. For the first time in decades, she was prioritizing her own mental health, and she noticed a marked improvement in her mood and outlook. Living alone helped her realize that self-care is not selfish. It's essential. 10. Embracing creativity in cooking and meals. Without the obligation to cook for others, living alone offers the freedom to experiment in the kitchen. Many older adults have shared that they found joy in cooking for themselves, treating it as a creative outlet rather than a chore. Susan, a woman in her mid-60s, shared how she started trying new recipes after moving into her own place. With no one else's preferences to cater to, she began experimenting with different cuisines, ingredients, and flavors that she'd never tried before. Now cooking is one of her favorite activities, and she looks forward to planning new meals each week. Similarly, Frank, a 72-year-old widower, took a different approach. He shared that living alone allowed him to simplify his meals. He created a weekly menu with easy-to-make, nutritious dishes and stuck to it. Frank said this routine gave him peace of mind, knowing he was eating well without the hassle of planning elaborate meals every day. What he once viewed as a necessity has become a comforting routine, something he looks forward to at the end of each day. Living alone in old age isn't about solitude, it's about freedom. It's about rediscovering what makes you, you. It gives you the space to grow, learn, and thrive at your own pace. Whether you're reconnecting with yourself, exploring new hobbies, or simply enjoying the silence, this is your time, so embrace it, celebrate it, you've earned it. Life alone can be deeply fulfilling when you recognize it as an opportunity to shape your world exactly how you want it. Take this journey day by day and remember, it's never too late to live the life you've always wanted. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching.